Welcome to the One on One podcast with your host, Juan Ayala.
Welcome back to another episode of the One on One podcast. I'm your host as always. Make sure to follow the show on social media at the One on One podcast, tjojp.com. Links down in the description. And today we're joined by the one, the only Dr. Narco Longus. Hasn't been on the show in quite a bit. So we're glad to have him back. He finally answered my emails, finally got back to me after probably over 666 tries to get him back on the show. He's so big now, he doesn't have time for the little guys. But what's up, Narco?
Miss you, man.
Miss you too, dude.
Been a little while, but I know you've been busy. I've been busy too, and that's not true, by the way. I've been trying to have you on the show, but whatever. Same old, same old. I see you're crushing it too. Good job.
Thanks, dude. Yeah, you've definitely come a long way since we first started the first episode we ever did, probably a couple years ago. And I'm gonna be in Miami in November, I think November or something. So let's plan to do a show.
Totally.
At the store.
We can go to the store. There's lots of good stuff to film in Miami too. Lots of good on-site locations.
Let's do it. So before we get started, can you let people know where they can find you, Narco?
Toads. I run the Old World Florida YouTube channel. We're on Instagram, Old World Florida with underscores. Got an X, Twitter too. I think it's Old World FL, or you'll be able to find it. Got a Patreon. We're on Twitch now and getting started on Spotify too. But Old World Florida is the brand. So if you search that, you can find me.
Right on. Yeah, make sure to check him out. I stumbled across Narco in my endeavors of Florida history, which he does contribute a lot to. And from, an alternative history perspective, because Florida is very rich in history. And today we're going to be talking about what I consider the conspiracy of fast food. And even fast food is kind of like a magical mantra, if you will. We all say it all the time. People are making a big deal about it now because the prices of everything is going up. And I recently watched your video on the Knights of the Golden Circle, which I had no idea about. And it was very enlightening. And it seems like these guys were onto us in a sort of way to change society, to continue their agenda, which at the end of the day is control over its people, slavery, whatever you want to call it. And what a better way than to control the food supply. Wasn't there a famous guy, a famous dictator that said in order to get control, just control their food supply? Or was that the Rothschild talking about the money?
I mean, probably every tyrant ever has uttered something like that. It's a reality, of controlling people is what's your most basic need, right? You can see, well, here, today, they're kind of, with this whole age of Aquarius, they're kind of trying to go more towards restricting breath, having dominion over our breath, which before was thought to be a irrevocable right. Now that's like, this new age, this new threat, new tyrants. But in the previous age, maybe the previous ages, food. And that still holds true today, but it's kind of your most basic need. That's why I said breath. You need to breathe pretty much every second you're awake. You need to eat every so often, right? So food, water, air. It's the name of the game if you want to control people.
Would you say that the control of food could be seen in a Saturnian light? Because isn't Saturn the ruler over crops? Doesn't he have the scythe, which is used for agriculture?
Yeah. So Saturn, for sure, being the harvest god, and the reaper, right, which is the harvest and, your soul, death, etc., the sight. But it's also Taurus, which brings us back to Moloch, because Moloch, believe it or not, is not synonymous with Saturn, and it's not exactly synonymous with the bull either. It's actually the union of the two, Saturn being venerated in the age of Taurus, is pretty much the composite there. So it's the bull, and it is where we get, milk, MLK, Moloch. But the word restaurant, as I've always said to you, you can never forget how to spell the word restaurant when you know your zodiac signs. Taurus, Taur. Restaurant, is a very Taurus activity. Restaurants are ruled by Taurus. Not only are you resting, but you're eating. Taurus rules both of those things. Taurus is the bull of the zodiac, and though not overtly connected with Saturn, in the age of Taurus, that's where you get Saturn being represented as the bull. So a lot of confusion, conflation there, but what governs human appetite would more be Taurus, and you could say Saturn kind of rules that federal annual food supply. But
And it's interesting that, right, this I've seen different interpretations of Moloch. I've seen it that it's actually the name of the ritual that they did to sacrifice. You have people who talk about it being an actual entity or deity, and you have, I mean, this is like one of the mainstream conspiracies, I guess you could call it, where it's like, oh, it was, here's the Vatican with a statue of Moloch in front of the building for a while. What's all that about? And it's become to be known as this offering your children to Moloch. But right, it's almost like I wonder if this was made out of gold or what. And there's also other interpretations of being put inside it, which is kind of a restaurant, right? You're putting yourself within the golden arches, which I don't think you talked about McDonald's in your video, but right, the is very Masonic, and the gold, which is all about what I believe, right? The ushering in, so alchemy could be looked at as ushering in a new age. So the golden age, right? You have the golden arches, which are probably the most well-known logo that there is in the world.
Right.
So this is something, it's rooted much deeper. So I tried looking up to see if Richard and Maurice McDonald, if they were Freemasons or not, which I'm sure they are. If they're so.
If I may, the people that I consulted with before doing the whole KGC fast food video, everyone I asked said McDonald's kind of had like a clean record. Like they were either quickly taken over after they were branded, and the branding doesn't have much to do with the agenda today, or it's just very, very well hidden. Also, I left McDonald's out of that KGC video because they're kind of the one who gets thrown under the bus the most and talked about the most, when there isn't that much evidence to show for any, adreno, etc., right? Whereas all these other brands, they have this very, very obvious legacy, Southern legacy, Civil War, even KKK, KGC, KFC. That's kind of where the whole rabbit hole started for me, was the silly similarity between KGC, which is probably the least known American secret society, who had the greatest impact, right, on American history. They were behind the Lincoln assassination of all the co-conspirators. Most of them were official members of the KGC. Knights of the Golden Circle. They wanted to, and I also found out about them because I talk about the Gulf of Mexico a lot. They wanted to make a so-called slave empire all around the Gulf of Mexico, which would include Florida, the Yucatan. The capital was actually going to be Havana. So a lot of this stuff I've been talking about in like an esoteric context, or biblical origins context, and there had to have been a thread of that in all this planning. Why they were ready to just detach themselves from the Northeast, the Northwest. They were satisfied with the Gulf of Mexico. You've got Jerusalem being on the same parallel as many of the important southern borders, the 31st parallel. So it's almost like a new Jerusalem, and it's actually some of the earliest settlements in Florida. Official settlements like under American Florida, starting in like the 1800s. They were calling it New Jerusalem. Pilgrimage plantation. You know, it was very sacred right for a lot of these European people to come over to Florida and have a experience there. So
you have the connection with like Cuba, the cube there, and the star lines up of their logo. I can't find it here, but it lines up with Cuba being the capital that they wanted.
Yes.
At the time. And I have a question I want to ask you. I don't know if you've been asked this before, but has there been any evidence that the Knights Templar could have been over, I guess, stateside?
Absolutely.
Is there really?
Absolutely. Now, the Micmac tribe, this is going out of Florida a little bit, so it's not really my expertise, but I have a subscriber who goes by Old World Micmac.
Oh, shout out to Micmac. Yeah, he's a good one.
Yep. He pops up on a lot of good channels, and he's not the gatekeeper of Micmac history or anything, but he's kind of one willing to share with us here on YouTube, trying to hash out the truth. And the Micmac origin stories tell of a transatlantic voyage, not just one, but a lot. They say that the Basque came there.
Oh, wow. The Micmac are peoples. I didn't know this.
Yeah. The Vikings. Oh, and this might have something to do with McDonald's too, but we'll put that to the side. Look at their logo to begin with. You've got the star, the crescent moon, and the red Catholic, Roman, Swiss, Templar cross, whatever you want to call it. Red cross on a white background. They say that the Vikings came there, of course, that the Basque came there, and the Celts came there, and that they interbred, mixed in with all of them, and also that the Knights Templar came there. They believe this, and a lot of this whole Oak Island stuff has to do with the Algonquin peoples, the Micmac peoples. So, a little away from Florida, but we have a lot of a kind of a similar legacy in Florida too. The oldest, Saint Bernard is the founder of the Knights Templar, or one of them, one of the earliest patrons, the earliest cheerleader for the Crusades. He was kind of like a public speaker, orator, and we can hover in the Micmac stuff a little because it's crazy. They have Egyptian characters.
Yeah, that's what it looks like.
They have a written language. They've always had a written language. They dressed completely differently than most Native Americans. And a lot of this goes hand in hand with the Mormon narrative. The Mormon church believes that they found that the founders of the Mormon church discovered Coptic, Hebrew, something Egyptian, refined Egyptian. I'm blanking.
Is that the golden tablet that only he could read?
Yeah, some of those. And he was saying in those mounds up there in the Northeast and near the Great Lakes, you can find stuff like this. It's not unfounded. There's a word, something Egyptian that I'm forgetting, but basically what a lot of the claims that the Mormon LDS Church was making, the Micmac can actually substantiate.
Reformed Egyptian?
Reformed Egyptian, yeah, thank you. So it's kind of just like Coptic Hebrew, North African Hebrew, maybe even, but whatever they had, the Micmac have traces of it.
Very similar.
You can't deny that. The only thing you really could say is that Joseph Smith was ripping off Micmac history or Algonquin history, or freebasing the native lore into something more palatable for Europeans. But these symbols are there. But that's up in the Northeast. So the Templars, the Micmac and others tell us, came to America, across the Atlantic, but then also that much of their treasure ended up in the South. South Carolina, Georgia. Some of the purest gold in the world comes out of Georgia. So they could have been getting a lot of this from over here. Most people think all the gold was coming out of South America. Well, yeah, there was a lot of gold artifacts. But if you're talking about raw, pure, 24-karat gold, that's found in the Georgia Gold Belt. But there's a legend that the Templars were stashing their gold in the South, the southern United States, that some of the native tribes were helping them, or, finding them and battling with them, and they were interacting. Some they allied with, some they were battling with. And the Micmac probably would have been one of those that they got, snuggled up with real close and found a lot in common, probably because they already had transatlantic lineage. But we know for sure that some of the Templar treasure made it into the Southeast United States. The only kind of thing you have to figure out or believe in is how much of that constituted the Confederate treasury when the Civil War came around. The Confederate treasury was believed to be very, very wealthy, lots of gold, meaning they had gold chests. You had financiers of the Confederacy who had ties to not only the slave trade, of course, but, the gold trade, the transatlantic gold trade. And you could say, some people would say the Civil War was fought over gold. And the KGC story definitely gives credence to that idea. Because the KGC, even though they were involved with the assassination of Lincoln, is less famous for that and more famous for the gold that they hid after the Civil War. That's pretty much how most people know about them. That's why they were in. Well, both of those were in National Treasure. Number 2, I know you're a big fan. Shout out Mr. Cage.
Hail Nicolas Cage.
We're going to steal the Declaration of Independence.
But he does a lot of pro-Masonic movies. There's one that he does, Zandali, where at the beginning of that movie, it's a Shriners party.
Yeah.
And so it's all very Masonic. His tomb is a freaking pyramid. It's got the pyramid on it. So I don't know about him. He's Spider-Man, which in my opinion, Spider-Man is very Masonic as well. So I don't know if he is, and this is confirmed directly from his offspring, Weston Cage, that they had, not only were they buying some of the most haunted houses in all the U.S., but he confirmed that as a child he would read from his father's occult library. So 100%, he was talking about having first editions of Aleister Crowley. I believe he also mentioned Albert Pike. So there's something to be said there about having an interest in the occult. All the movies he does are very occult, very pro-Masonic.
Also, I believe his name, it was that's a pseudonym, or that's an acting name, Nicolas Cage. Well, it would have been, it's It's an astrological match. Nicholas, Saint Nicholas, is Santa, is Saturn, is Satan. And to nick, to cut, to tax, so Nicholas, there's lots of different meanings. And then cage to imprison. Saturn, to restrict, right?
He did the Wicker Man.
And he's a Capricorn, is why I say that is. He's ruled by Saturn. They're more of a darker persona, more of the Edgar Allan Poe was a Capricorn. They're all about that dark occult.
Allegedly, the name Cage it was inspired by Luke Cage, according to Mr. Nick Cage, which
Nice.
is a comic book character. I don't know a lot about him, but he apparently is so known as Power Man. All right, so we have the maybe a little bit of Ubermensch or Overman there, right? Some Nietzschean philosophy.
Luke is Lucifer. Not to reduce it to that, but Luke is the same root. Luke, if you're lukewarm, I'll spit you out. God says Luke is to be in between. Goes back to Libra. Lucifer, Luke Skywalker, Libra. He's right in the middle of the zodiac. And yeah, a little bit of a stretch.
Black supposition, but black exploitation. How the hell do you say that word? Black exploitation.
Blaxploitation.
Is an ethnic subgenre of the exploitation film that emerged in the United States when the combined...
Ghetto gaggers.
Never heard of that either, bro.
Yeah, you heard of that. You're how I found out about that.
Yikes. So apparently he gained superhuman powers from being imprisoned, and
Hang
then
on. I think the KGC is behind Ghetto Gaggers. GG.
Ghetto Geigers.
Ghetto Gaggers.
Ghetto.
Don't look it up.
I have to, bro, because I don't know.
No.
Okay. Oh, yikes. All right, Ghetto Gaggers. Yikes. Now that's on my search history. Thanks, bro. So, okay.
Work computer.
Yeah. Gonna get flagged. So we have this
Reel it back.
In National Treasure 2, which it's not the first one, it's 2.
Mm-hmm.
This is where this KCG KGC.
Well, to your point, one, you're right about Nick wasn't just an actor on that movie. I think he was filling more of a producer-director role. I could be wrong, but I watched all the behind the scenes. It was certainly a passion project for him. They weren't just doing a Hollywood script. They converted a book called Rebel Gold into the script of the movie. Kind of. It's fictionalized, it's dramatized, but...
Metafiction is what they call it.
Right.
So taking stuff that's based on reality and then putting the Hollywood twist on it, which in my opinion, that's the most powerful form of mimetic magic you can use, where you turn it into a work of art that people can interact with, and then put the meme master himself, Mr. Nick Cage, who is a walking, talking meme, at the forefront of it.
100%. And it's also, I gotta say, it ends with them finding the Templar treasure. The Templar treasure is the Confederate treasure, it is the KGC treasure, and it was in America the whole time. That's kind of the big reveal of the movie, spoiler.
So, and here's the thing with me and this whole, because we have the concept, and the reason I asked you about the Knights Templar being in the States is because because if the KGC were an offshoot of the Templars, or I'm sorry, of the Freemasons, and the Freemasons allegedly are an offshoot of the Templars, right? And the Templars had this whole secret knowledge or esoteric knowledge, and X marks the spot, right? And these KGC guys were marking Cuba. Like, what is there in Cuba, which has been at the center of a lot of controversy throughout all the years? You have the Bay of Pigs, you have a whole bunch of other, you have Guantanamo Bay, you have all this other stuff that points to something. Did they have some esoteric knowledge of these locations, and is that why they were significant to this group?
Yes, Albert Pike is believed to have been a father of the KGC, and we pretty much know that for sure because before the KGC, they were known as the Order of the Lone Star. So if you're taking the Order of the Lone Star, OLS, which is where you get the logo, state flag, and motto, unofficial motto of Texas, the Lone Star State, that comes from the Lone Star, Order of the Lone Star. They became the Knights of the Golden Circle, but, and we'll get back to the Templars, but Cuba is important because they actually succeeded in Cuba. Just to catch everybody up, the Civil War happened because the KGC largely started it. Not only were they behind the assassination attempts on Lincoln and a couple others, and the eventual successful assassination, but they were also behind the militias in most of the South and behind a lot of the slaveholder elite class. And they were also very into the occult. They had degrees, they had rituals, initiations. This was an esoteric order, similar to the Knights Templar and Freemasons. And the OLS, all of this was connected with most of the Southern leadership at the time of the Civil War were members of either of those organizations. The entire administration that preceded Lincoln, all of them, I think it was Buchanan, I could be wrong, but whoever preceded Lincoln, I'm blanking, him and his whole cabinet were members of the OLS or KGC. And
Andrew Johnson was the 17th president of the United States, serving 1865, 1860.
He followed.
Following, yeah.
Yeah, who was before Lincoln.
Oh, before Lincoln.
Yeah.
Before Lincoln.
But
James Buchanan.
yeah, so Buchanan and his whole administration were members of the KGC or OLS. And so they were the instigators, the agitators behind the Civil War. Some say it needed to happen. You know, I do sympathize with a lot of the Southern.
Somebody clip that. Huh?
I do sympathize with some of what the South was fighting against. But when you look at the spark behind the war, it was undoubtedly an elite class of slaveholders. Again, and I'm not overly sensitive about that stuff either. So for me to stumble onto this was not intentional or like social justice driven by any means.
Mm-hmm.
This was just, hidden American history. And they really did want a empire that encompassed the whole Gulf of Mexico. And that was largely okay, well, here's another way you can link them to the Templars, is that this esoteric order was the banking elite behind the Confederacy. So they had most of the gold. And when the Civil War ended, this is kind of what leads to the national treasure, they stashed, not only did they have a lot of gold, but when the Civil War started, they seized all the federal gold in the South. So now they had kind of double the gold. When the Civil War ended, they didn't return it, of course. You know what I mean? They all stashed it in the South. There's actually a very famous story about the official Confederate reserve, the official Confederate treasury escaping into Florida. That's in that video too. You had Jefferson Davis, the president of the South. He and one of the main financiers behind the Confederacy, a Jewish financier named Judah Benjamin, resident of Louisiana and Florida. He was the second in command for the Confederacy, and he was Jewish, and he was involved with the KGC and the OLS. And he, when the Civil War was ending, though they thought they could keep fighting, they had their capital in Richmond, Virginia, which is pretty far up north. So they were thinking that they're going to retreat down to Florida or Texas and continue the Civil War. They're just going to, they thought they were just regrouping. What's his face hadn't surrendered yet. I forget
I don't know.
the general's name, Lee or something. But the main one who surrendered at Appomattox, I know where it happened. The main surrender, that was not the actual end of the Civil War. Most of the South was ready to keep fighting. It was when Jefferson Davis got caught and all the money was taken and the money was gone for good. That's when the Civil War really ended. And their goal, they hightailed it out of Richmond. Their goal was to make it to Florida, and then either to escape by boat to Texas or the Bahamas or Cuba. And Jefferson Davis was on this treasure train. They had all this gold. They had a single train car, and they were hightailing it for Florida. Well, as they're going, people are kind of losing faith and making excuses. And, oh, yeah, I'm going to catch up. Okay, I'll catch up with you guys in Georgia. And then they'll, go turn themselves in or go secure their house and, switch sides. And the Civil War was kind of ending, but they hadn't fully given up hope. But there were people defecting from the South, and they knew how much money they had. Now, the North, the Union sent a lot of soldiers, many different units, bloodhounds, hunting dogs, torches through the night, searching every nook and cranny from Richmond down to Florida. They were hot on the trail of this Confederate treasury train, and eventually they have to take what they can off the train, start going off by foot. This is where you get the legends, the stories of Jefferson Davis getting caught, the president of the Confederacy, getting caught in Georgia, dressed as a woman, or that the people they were with were dressing as women to escape capture, their last-ditch effort. But the Union was searching house to house, every river, every rock they were flipping over. They found Jefferson Davis. Well, Jefferson Davis didn't have that much money on him. They think he might have given a shit ton of money to a bunch of soldiers and friends and said, oh, go off and, do what you can. But with how much money left Richmond, how much gold the Confederacy still had, they believe, and we know for a fact, that a good portion of it made it down to the Yulee plantation in Florida. So this Confederate gold is escaping. Jefferson Davis gets arrested, but someone still has the gold.
He looks like Abraham Lincoln, bro. Are they related?
A lot of people, that's a whole nother rabbit hole. A lot of people think that they're played by the same actor. Now, I think that's too ridiculous for me. I think it's more of just God kind of makes it happen that way.
If
that looks like
Booth,
that looks like Lincoln.
Literally, the guy who assassinated him was literally, like, I've heard him be compared to Johnny Depp of his time. He was like one of the most famous actors.
He was.
Of all time. That's why they let him go to the president. Like, oh my God, it's Nick Cage. It's Mr. Cage. Yeah, go ahead and meet the president.
He worked there, yeah.
I wouldn't put it past that they're all literal players in this play. And what a coincidence that he was at. What was the play that was going on when Lincoln was taken out? Do we have any information on that? Or weren't they chanting something?
Well, the play was, it's in the video. I'm forgetting because I don't really like theater at all.
These dudes' heads were photoshopped. Look at this. This looks so fake. Look at all these dudes' heads.
Well, Jefferson Davis, could it have been some big Illuminati ploy? Who knows? Could have. Wouldn't put it past him. But I think people are always very quick to eliminate God from the equation. Oh, that had to be the Illuminati. Oh, those two things sync up like that. Oh, Illuminati.
Yeah.
Where's God in the equation? Is it just the devil? Is it just George Bush and a magic hat coming up with all this gematria and evil stuff just to make you stay up all night. No, 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 no. Let's leave some of it to the angels too. Okay? You know, I think it's much more like, and I'm speaking to all these doomer truthers out there who want to think everything's Illuminati. Sometimes things sync up like that. It just happens. You know? Can you see the irony, the cosmic irony in having the leaders of this, two leaders of the same nation fighting against each other, looking almost the same? You know, there's value in there's a symbolism there. There's an allegory there. There's a, you know, they look like twins. It's true. They look like twins.
Which goes
So,
through all mythology. The twins always fighting one another. And that's something that I've always said too, where you have people who want to make a conspiracy out of everything. Not everything is a conspiracy, right? Like sometimes things are just the way they are. And that's just it.
life is a conspiracy.
Life is
a conspiracy perpetrated by angels and God. Behind the scenes where you never see what's going on. Behind the curtain, all the perfection in nature. Yeah, big grand cosmic conspiracy. God and angels working overtime. You know?
The divine comedy. No, absolutely. And I think that I think part of the aspect of this whole thing is it's fun to speculate. I'm a skeptic before anything else. And I think during this time, anything could, like now day and age, you have cameras, you have all this technology, which it's a lot harder to, I guess, hide things. Not really, but still. But
You could
more
pull
of
it
this
off back
time.
then.
What was that?
I said you could definitely pull it off back then.
Exactly.
Big beard, little.
Exactly. So, and I heard a conspiracy or a concept one time that the whole Lincoln being assassinated was because he was going to shut down some of the funding, or they were like in debt to something, and that's why that happened, or they wanted the war to happen. I have to look back at what it was, but that sounds awfully similar to why the Templars were taken out, right? The hierarchy at the time owed a ton of money to them, who were funding everything, and he wanted to clear the debt. So hey, what a better way than they worship the devil. And it's like, we know what happened there because that's what's in the history books.
There's truth to that for sure. If you look at the words of the founder, the so-called founder of the KGC, he kind of got in with the OLS, the Order of the Lone Star, and then he kind of coined the KGC from that. His name was George Bickley. If you look into the words of Bickley, Bickley is regarded as a scam artist, right? Kind of like he's remembered, kind of how Joseph Smith is remembered. Oh, very dubious, very, you can't trust anything he ever said. So I don't know how much of that is true because he was on the, wrong side of history. But if you look at his own words, he was kind of bragging when he made the statement, I have mobilized like the greatest, I've initiated the greatest military mobilization and modern war in human history. He took credit for the start of the Civil War. So if you're looking at the leader and his own words, right, sometimes they do just tell you what they really think and want.
Mm-hmm.
He said, I started the Civil War. I take credit for starting this great, marvelous war, this mechanized, new type of warfare. They had, new guns and stuff that didn't look like the wars before. And it was brutal, brother on brother. Literally in every state, there was brothers fighting brothers, fathers fighting sons. And a lot of it was behind, again, I'm not going too deep down the mainstream. It was just slavery narrative, but the people behind the mass mobilization were slave holders, probably not your average, everyday soldier from the Confederacy, but the leadership was certainly Caribbean slave trading families who had links to, the Barbary slave trade and and the Levant, we'll just say, they were Jewish. Some of them, people don't know that about the Confederacy. It's forgotten history that a lot of them were Jewish slave traders who came to the Gulf of Mexico for spiritual reasons. And that's kind of what my next video is about. But the KGC stashing all this gold. So a lot of that gold, we were talking about the Confederate treasury, a lot of that made it down to Florida. It was being brought down by, like I said, Jefferson Davis and his crew. Jefferson Davis gets caught, but some of the men keep going, and they have a lot of this money. Well, they end up making it to the Yulee Plantation. Yulee, that's a big historic site in Florida. The Yulee Plantation, he owned a bunch of plantations. That's where the Confederate treasury ended. It's believed that to this day, there's gold buried somewhere near there. And they've found tens of thousands, which I guess would be hundreds of thousands or millions today, whatever, of gold near here. There's all these legends of gold being stashed. And this isn't just like, oh, Grandpappy told me a story once. This is the recorded movements. The final recorded movements of the Confederate treasury was the Yulee Plantation. If you search Confederate Treasury Yulee Plantation, yeah, pop up. And why it was headed there was because the first Jewish senator in American history was David Levy Yulee. David Levy Yulee. He was the first senator of Florida. So Florida's very first senator was also America's first Jewish senator. And his father was Moses Levy. Moses Levy was a Caribbean slave trader, timber trader, and he was a devout Jew. And he came to Florida right before statehood, right when the Spanish kind of turned it over to America, 1820. He came over to Florida to start a Jewish utopia. Quote, the New Jerusalem. The New Jerusalem, because it was pretty much on the same latitude as Jerusalem. And Mississippi, the Mississippi River, is where the border of West Florida used to go. West Florida is the Lone Star Republic. And that was started by the Order of the Lone Star. And there, those people in West Florida went and started Texas. Texas, to this day, has the Lone Star flag that they took from Florida. And we were talking about Cuba. Cuba, to this day, even though the Civil War ended, the gold made it down to Florida. It was hidden. Judah P. Benjamin was the other Jewish financier of the Confederacy, second in command for the Confederacy. He regrouped at the Yulee Plantation, probably received a lot of that gold, and he made it out to the Bahamas, then Cuba, and then he went back to England and became a barrister, a judge, high up in His Majesty's court, or Her Majesty's court. And
what an interesting, so we have Moses and David almost on this pilgrimage, and what you said earlier about it having some sort of spiritual significance. Mm-hmm. That's the whole, the Holy Land, the New Jerusalem. And wasn't what's the guy's name that had the Christianity? Wasn't he also talking about New Jerusalem
yes,
on that side of Florida? That'd be what the west coast of Florida, Crystal River area, if I'm not mistaken, is where he was at, near there.
Yeah, he was a little more south towards like Fort Myers.
Okay, you're right.
Estero.
We should go there, dude.
Which is, yeah, I've been there. It's kind of boring because there's just like old log cabins left over. But it's cool.
Oh, you've been to the park, to where they were at?
Yeah. Corsham, Unity.
Here you go. So, yeah, it's down way. Yeah, I was way off. I was all the way up here. So
that's close.
Bonita Springs area stereo, and this is what he claimed to be Jesus Christ reincarnated. So he is on something else, but the yeah, he was talking about the New Jerusalem, but again, it's kind of sort of on this Fertile Crescent sort of thing. It is a pilgrimage that they were on.
Yeah.
And that's awfully similar, dude, to again the Knights Templar, right? Guarding the Holy Land sort of thing. And it feels like this Knights of the Golden Circle were like fighting the war in today's time, sort of. So it's almost like a Confederate conspiracy, if you will. Everyone's up against the bad guy, which was Abraham Lincoln, and then that did the whole trickle effect. And we have Florida tied into there because didn't they keep the doctor that treated him down here by the Dry Tortugas National Park?
Yeah, that's what's crazy is that fort remained in Union hands the whole time, even though Florida became a Confederate state. The Union kept a lot of their forts,
like Guantanamo Bay.
Now, also, what's interesting is Moses Levy came to Florida to start his New Jerusalem because of a spiritual epiphany, an experience that he had. He sold most of his businesses, left his family behind, most of his family, and then rushed off to Florida and bought 100,000 acres. Back then, that was one of the largest land purchases in Florida. It might have been the largest for that time. And he did so. The Inquisition was kind of still going on. And he was a Sephardic Jew, had been expelled from Morocco. His family had been expelled from, all across the Mediterranean. And they came to the Caribbean and just did what they were doing in the Mediterranean. Well, then he has a spiritual experience. He leaves most of his family.
Did he say what it was, that spiritual experience?
He just said that he had to start the New Jerusalem, and he had to begin a Jewish utopia, and they had to settle Florida, because remember, Florida was the starting point for most of North America in terms of settlement, that they had to settle North America, especially Florida, in order for the Messiah to return. So they, like the Mashiach, the Jewish Messiah, that they wanted, you had to settle the new world before the Mashiach could come back. Because God's message, the Jews, the Hebrew, way of life had to spread to every corner of the world according to some interpretations of this messianic prophecy. And but here, just to link this back to the Knights Templar real quick, the oldest building, they say the Western Hemisphere. I don't know if that's true. They might just mean the Americas. A lot of people get that wrong. I get that wrong all the time. The oldest building in the Americas, building, meaning 4 walls and a roof, the oldest building, masonry structure, is in Miami, South Florida, and it's a abbey, like a monastery, a piece of a monastery.
What's the name?
Saint Bernard de Clairvaux. Saint Bernard is, like I was saying earlier, the founder of the Knights Templar, the patron saint of the Knights Templar.
Oh,
and this came from the border of France and Spain. That border's changed quite a bit over the time, but this monastery was shipped.
Is it this one?
That's it, the ancient Spanish monastery.
What?
And Saint Bernard de Clairvaux, this is the oldest building in all of the Americas. It's 1,000 years old. Close to 1,000.
So
what do they say? It's 1100s, built in the 1100s. But here's the thing. It wasn't built in Florida, they tell us. They tell us that it was constructed on the border of Spain and France, and then deconstructed. It was purchased illegally because of all people, William Randolph Hearst, the same guy who lobbied to get cannabis criminalized, the same guy who lobbied to get people institutionalized and thrown in jail and prison for menial offenses. That same William Randolph Hearst, America's greatest media mogul there's ever been.
Yikes.
Hearst published most of the papers and newspapers and magazines our parents grew up with in America. He himself, just for the hell of it, because he liked it and wanted to and was, extravagant, decadent, he wanted to bring this monastery to America. So he had it deconstructed. He bought it illegally, like I said, and then had it deconstructed, packed up in boxes, numbered and packed up in boxes. And then they shipped it to, I think, New York. And then it sat for like 20 or 30 years. A long ass time. It sat there. And that was in the 1920s when Hearst was kind of at his peak. And then it just sat for 30 years. Someone bought it, like these brothers or these businessmen in South Florida. Now, someone prove me wrong. I'd love to see. There's no pictures of them putting this thing together.
That's what I was gonna say. It sounds so ridiculous, bro. Like
I could be wrong. I could not find any. I've done 2 videos on it. I've been there. We filmed part of Old World Order there, but they told us to leave. And this is a real, like, Templar monastery. I don't know if this Templars were living there or working there, but Saint Bernard is the founder of the Templars. So this Spanish monastery is named for Saint Bernard de Clairvaux. There are some crazy statues in there. It's made of limestone. I know that, and there is limestone in Florida.
it looks beautiful.
But-
I mean,
Yeah, it is. It's
but
crazy.
What is this, IKEA? Just deconstruct the building, box it up, and then ship it overseas. What a crazy story, dude.
And they even say that they lost a ton of the pieces and had to kind of like go from scratch. Like they reshaped it into their own shape because they were missing some of the Legos, so the instructions wouldn't work anymore.
What
and
if
they had to just go from scratch?
a little homunculus? What if, dude? I mean, this could be like,
It could have always been there.
Well, it could have always been there, but like back again to this idea of what a weird place to put it, right? Miami, out of all places. And then on top of that, we have the concept of King Solomon's temple, right? We know that the Templars and all these guys had a connection to Solomon, right? Or was Solomon, I mean, at this point in time, I'll believe anything, but was Solomon actually some sort of esoteric knowledge and never an actual person, right? Because he's got this mythological aspect to him. So what was so special about this building that this dude needed to have it over here? Like, he needed and it wasn't even assembled during his lifetime.
Yeah.
Like it wasn't even, was it assembled during his lifetime, or did he die and then somebody took it over?
Yeah, he died before it ever left his warehouse, and someone purchased it. Here's another crazy part, Juan. Half of it was constructed here in Miami. They tell us the other half was assembled in the Bahamas. So the cloisters at the Bahamas is the other half of this. And so that's like the outer part of the monastery. And that is like a crazy, big, long... I mean, to think that they took that from where it was... If you just look this up for me, please. The cloisters at the Bahamas.
The cloisters?
Yeah, CLOISTER.
CLOI?
Yeah,
S?
cloisters, Bahamas. It'll pop up. So the cloisters at the Bahamas is the other half. And when you see how big and long this is,
That's what she said.
yeah, You're welcome. That first time you ever heard that in your life. But basically, the cloisters is so long and it's such a big piece of land. Yeah, that's it in the picture.
Is this it?
That's it in the picture. I don't know where it is.
The
on which
medieval
house.
cloisters?
Yep, that's it.
So
So that is the other half of this. It's like the outer half. And that was the same thing where William Randolph Hearst bought it. It just kind of sat and someone reconstructed it. I believe it's the same thing as the one in Florida, they tell us. Just the like external parts, because there wasn't much space in Miami. This part takes up like a mile, right? This is such a long walkway. Probably takes up like a square mile if you add it up all together, the width and the length. How did they find the same terrain to assemble all this piece by piece like it was in Spain or France? You're telling me they found the same type of hill?
Yeah.
Where it goes up, or did they shape the entire landscape here just to match this building, just for some ridge? I want this to look like that. Now make it look like this. Just some rich lady, like, barking orders, or
From a 14th century Augustinian monastery.
okay.
Dismantled and imported from Europe by William Randolph Hearst. What?
Okay. So same person, but not the same building, they tell us.
So they say, yeah, exactly. But it was by the same guy. This William Randolph Hearst guy.
He's Bach Tower worked for Hearst.
Did he really?
I believe so, yeah.
Interesting. Yeah, I had no idea about this, dude. But there's something, in my opinion, talismanic in nature with these buildings that these guys need, right? So we're talking about the Micmac earlier and how maybe they got taken over. Well, it wouldn't be the first time that these elites are take over the indigenous or the peoples there and use their, right? They were building churches over pagan sites. They were, using these sort of energies and taking over their stuff, their technology, in my opinion, to use it for their own purposes. Right. Yep. So here we have, this is so bizarre, bro. Like, just take apart a building and ship it overseas. Who even thinks of that? Who looks at one of these ancient buildings and goes, can we ship it? Like, if it fits, it ships type of, like, nobody.
Right. You're going to risk life and limb, dozens of people's lives just for a bunch of stones. Maybe. I'm not discounting it, but it's similar to the Fort Jefferson story.
Yes.
Yeah, these boats need these rocks need to go here, no matter the danger, no matter the cost.
Yeah, that's crazy. I had no idea about this place. I'm gonna have to take a visit.
Yeah, it's very cool. They got lots of cats there. They believe in cats, feral cats. They say the cats keep good energy, and that the cat pee keeps away the rats. And
is that why they're eating them?
That's funny. There are some Haitians down there.
Oh man. So, all right. So we have the oldest. So that links.
Here. That actually links us to non-cattle, non-livestock animals making their way into the American food supply. That's kind of what we're gearing up to talk about anyway, is the Knights of the Golden Circle. When I began that whole video, yes, it leads off the Templars. Yes, it leads off to the Lincoln assassination and the Confederate treasury making its way down to Florida, getting hidden, stashed in Florida. Judah Benjamin making his escape out of Florida. With a lot of that, Judah Benjamin, the second in command, had a suit filled with gold bars when he escaped the Confederate treasure train that was escaping Richmond. He had clothing. He was a big, burly, chubby guy.
You like burgers?
Yeah, he looked like Seth Rogen. Could have played him at his fattest, right? Like he, whatever. So he escapes. He told Jefferson Davis that he was going to help him out. He's like, "Oh, I'm going to come back with more help. but he just takes off, and he's got this gold suit, like he's wearing just they look like normal clothes, but underneath is stitched gold bars into every sleeve and crevice of his body, so that he could pay his way around the South as he's escaping. He had to bribe all these people. He had to bribe his way out of trouble a million times. He escapes Florida from the Gamble plantation. It's another big plantation house. It's still there today. He escapes. He probably had a lot of that Confederate treasury with him. So that's the end of that story. But there's all these interesting rabbit holes. And those were kind of expected. The one that I didn't expect that we touched on earlier a little bit was KGC, KFC. Sounds ridiculous, right? Surely that's just a coincidence. Surely that's just, my pot smoking brain, right? Going schizo with things that don't really belong. Well, that's not true. The reality is there's a very firm link between the two. Yep.
This is for mathematics, but I did see F and F and G. Maybe that's why we can't say it. Yeah, maybe that's why we can't say it anymore. But
well, that's interesting. Just real quick, because a lot of this activity happens at the Florida, Alabama, Georgia border. The FAG region, as I call it. Yeah.
It's fake and gay. So we have the FAG there. Okay. Damn, bro, that esoteric goodness. But yes, I did see that the letters are interchangeable. Therefore, you could switch, KGC and turn it into KFC.
Right.
In some sort of nod to, I can't find it, but I did see it in your video that you did put that.
Well, yeah, it's crazy. It's more than a nod. We'll just say that. You're talking about the White Duke. What's his name? Colonel Sanders.
Is that what he called himself?
He was a real Kentucky. Well, it's his nickname. What's the David Bowie nickname? The White Duke. But he's the white man. He only ever wore his white suit for the last 30 years of his life. You know that?
No.
And when appearing in public, he only ever wore his white suit. Now, sometimes his little bow tie thing there, ribbon tie, sometimes he would wear one in the shape of the pie, like pie. Some say it was a Hebrew character, some say it was the pi symbol, but he would have it shaped differently certain days. But he only ever wore white. Some say he even dyed his hair and beard whiter than they actually were. And just to start off, Colonel Sanders was a 33rd degree Master Freemason. That's a fact. His protege, the founder of Wendy's, I think his name was Dave Smith, also a 33rd degree Freemason. Now, he's got this whole colonel motif, colonel aesthetic, because he's a real Kentucky colonel. That's an honorary title, just like the 33rd degree of Freemasonry is an honorary title. You get gifted it. You don't really earn it, right? You don't really pass a test for that. It's gifted due to status or accomplishments. So,
what's this sign here? Is this it's got
the Shriners?
Shriners. Okay, and then they got the 33 there.
Yeah. So he was a 33rd degree Freemason. He actually catered the Manhattan Project.
Wait, what?
So, yep. Before he was famous, before they were famous as KFC, he was just getting into the Kentucky the fried chicken game, and he took a job that included the cafeteria.
That's so bizarre, dude.
He fed Manhattan Project.
Just want to remind everyone, make sure to check out the show on Patreon, patreon.com/the One-on-One Podcast. I constantly get emails. Oh, only one episode a week. Yeah, one episode a week for the public, but for as little as $5 a month, you can get up to two, sometimes three, sometimes one episode per day on the Patreon, as well as on the YouTube channel as a member for as little as $5. And there's also on the Patreon over 250 episodes only found on there. There's an extensive backlog of episodes. So check that out if for those interested, for those asking. Make sure to follow the show on YouTube, Juan Juan Podcast. Also, Juan Juan Media. I am going live every Tuesday on there streaming. I also go live on twitch.tv/ Juan on Juan Podcast. So make sure to check me out on there Tuesdays, 6 p.m. Eastern. And make sure to get your copy of the Occultus Mundi Homunculus Owner's Manual, all that good stuff at tjojp.com. Can pick up your copies there or go over to the Ko-Fi. I'm on Facebook, Twitch, Kick, Rumble, all that good stuff. You know where to find it. And enjoy this episode.
So the scientists, the workers, they were all eating KFC or whatever else he was cooking. Not only that, he worked for Standard Oil. He was a manager, like a regional manager with Standard Oil. And he owned 3 gas stations. And in one of these things, he got in a shootout with another Standard Oil or Rockefeller executive. And one of them died. And some say some say he stopped the fight, but he was involved in a shooting in which a Standard Oil executive was shot and killed. Also, the Rockefeller, Standard Oil, even though they'd changed their name by then, they were at the Manhattan Project too, by the way.
You see, dude, you were talking about not everything is a conspiracy, but that's kind of weird. That's kind of bizarre.
That's weird.
And then look at this. So the first KFC was built in Salt Lake City, Utah, which this is the connection to the Mormons, right? You have the connection. This is like one of their hubs.
Right, yeah. Well, he partnered with a Mormon businessman.
Oh,
And then,
wow.
yeah. So he was, I think it was just Harland, Colonel Harland. He was selling it at his gas stations. He was selling it. He was kind of pitching his chicken to different places, his recipe, his style, his pressure cooker style. And then I believe when it came to the KFC chain itself, yeah, that was started by his Mormon businessman, Mormon partner. And yeah, the Mormons, of course, have a lot of ties to Freemasonry. Some say it's just a Freemasonic religion.
It's Freemasonry for the family.
Yeah. But that's true. But basically, now we're seeing like the southern leadership kind of getting into fast food, and you're gonna see what I mean here. The
Leon
KFC
Weston Pete Harmon was the guy. Sorry to cut you off. Was the American businessman best known for having struck a deal with Colonel Harlan Sanders to open up the first KFC franchise. There you
go. Their whole thing was cleanliness is what a lot of these, there's always this like veiled language, double meanings. They were always talking about cleanliness and purity and how clean the restaurant needs to be and how clean the food needs to be and how like sterilized. So all these fast food places, they actually didn't start off because they were fast. They started off because they were clean. And I'm not kidding, because it was all white tile. You could see all the, spilled food, or you could see back into the kitchen. You could see everything being made. It was all about cleanliness and open. Because there were meat packing. These restaurants like KFC revived the meat industry. In the 20s and a little bit after that, there were all these meat packing scares. You've heard of muckrakers, right? The muckrakers started out with, child labor and meat packing. It's like it was like Taco Bell 100 years ago. People didn't know how bad the ground beef and stuff was, how poorly it was being treated, and how rotten it was getting shipped across America, and how corrupt the kitchens were, putting spoiled meat into everyone's food, just cooking it to where it wouldn't get them sick. And The people were going vegetarian by the thousands in America in the 20s. There were all these health movements. After World War II, people were done with blood and gore. And well, the fast food industry really convinced people to go back on a heavy corpse diet because they were pitching themselves as cleaner than home cooking. When was the last time you cleaned your oven the way we clean our mega heavy duty, stainless steel or whatever? It was very industrial, and they had this like assembly line. People loved the clean, spotless, how they used to look. They used to be all tile and nice. That diner, um, that diner aesthetic. People craved that. So they really got off, branded themselves on cleanliness. But what I'm getting at is there's this double meaning here of cleanliness too, like racial purity, cleaning up the streets, cleaning up society, and sterility. Yeah, we have a very sterile work environment. Okay, well, is the food going to make people right? This isn't a stretch.
So,
There's
real
been
quick,
there's been legends that fast food makes you. Everyone jokes or knows about that. The black community in particular has long said that KFC, Popeyes, and the other ones, that those are particularly targeting them with extra sterilizing food. Their words, not mine, but yeah, you're saying?
so we have here, I want to point out that the KFC logo, right, we're focusing on KFC, but the KFC has very Masonic colors, by the way. Or I'm sorry, Templar color. You got the red and the white and the black. So very, very Templar-ish of them. But we literally have a connection of... So you said that he was not part of it, but feeding the Manhattan Project, where you fed the people
Yes.
there, right? He's very, very catering to them.
Yeah.
Manhattan Project, I would kind of put that in line with Project McUltra, because he had a McNugget from the McUltra, right?
Oh, wow, that's good.
So McUltra, right?
McFood.
People know,
Yeah.
with the food, dude. I mean, this has been, I don't want to call it a conspiracy, but something that could 100% be true, bro. Where it's the mind control.
Oh, it's true.
Well, there you go, dude. It's true. I mean, I wouldn't put it past them. There's entire movies of what's that one movie with the train, right? We were talking about trains earlier and how they boarded the trains. We know Florida was known for Henry Flagler and what? His system of trains. And that movie with the Snowpiercer, where they're turning the bugs up and feeding them to the people, back again to them. Nobody knew. Nobody batted an eye because they didn't know where it came from. But as soon as they knew, they're like, this needs to be stopped, right? Because they knew about it. So
Totally.
and there's been plenty of movies where they've kept people down and sedated through the use of food. I mean, I can't think of one now, but I'm sure there's a ton of them.
Totally. Well, as soon as I made this, the first there's so many angles to talk about. I always get overwhelmed talking about this is such a broad topic, so far reaching. But the very first ever big movie about the KKK was Birth of a Nation. In Birth of a Nation, they feature fried chicken and like hundreds of black people going crazy over chicken. Like that's where the chicken stereotype was like really forged. They say that whatever, you watch the movie, there's scenes where they're feasting on chicken in a very, demeaning way. And that was definitely the inspiration for Colonel Sanders and KGC. And this whole movie glorifies the KKK and really brought them back to popularity in the South. And Colonel Sanders definitely was a fan of this. His family might have been a part of it. Most people in the South were. Kentucky is actually where the KGC was founded. Knights of the Golden Circle were founded in, I believe, Lexington. KGC, founded in Kentucky. KFC, founded in Kentucky. Now, I can prove this to you. not only was Colonel Sanders a Freemason, but when KFC serves grilled chicken, when they serve grilled chicken instead of fried chicken, your packaging will have KGC on it. Yes, yes, yes. Look it up. Most people don't get the grilled chicken because it's not always in circulation. It's like the McRib. You know, it only comes out at certain times, I think, or at least these certain menu items. And this is good old school conspiracy theories, by the way. Schizoing out on KFC menu items. Like I've come full circle in my conspiracy.
So you said that the packaging of the grilled chicken at KFC has
KGC. Yep, look it up. KGC.
Oh wow, yes, yes it does. Kentucky grilled chicken.
It even says KGC if you look it up. KGC KFC. When KFC, you know how McDonald's will fund the Olympics, or
wow,
you know how yeah, you know how some of these fast food places will, like Subway will kind of brand themselves as like a little bit healthier than other fast food, right? Like, oh, we're the healthiest option. Well, KFC obviously can't really claim that. But when they present themselves on the world stage at the Olympics, at the X Games, at any of these international arenas where it's kind of like health or fitness related, they still want to get in on the action. They still want to, get in on the money. They're still owned by PepsiCo, right? Or something, or Taco Bell is. So, they're still part of these big entrepreneurial, organizations, these big corporations. They want to get in on the action, even if it's health food. So at the Olympics, you can look this up. It's in my video. You'll never see KFC at the Olympics. They rebrand themselves as KGC. And when you see they hosted this whole volleyball tournament and stuff, it's KGC. You don't even hear them as KFC. They've got their own reporter working for Kentucky Fried Chicken. He's got KGC on. The girls have KGC uniforms on. So, they really lean into this KGC branding when they want to.
Because grilled has always been presented as, oh, it's healthier.
Yeah.
Here it is, right? It's like, oh, because again, I do it too. Like instead of getting the regular nuggets at Chick-fil-A, which Chick-fil-A kind of again, you got the CC in there somewhere, I'm sure.
Yeah.
All right, 33. I get the grilled ones. Oh, why? It goes because they're a little healthier, right? I don't got they're not fried. So
yeah,
it's literally MK Ultra through food. And what a better way than they always say that the way to a man's heart is through his stomach. Is that how it goes? Is that the saying? Or did I mess that up? But the point being that you use all the alchemy, right? So you have this guy who only dressed in white for whatever reason towards the end of his life. The whitening stage in alchemy represents the beginning of individuation, which is kind of weird, right? Kind of found himself towards the end of his life and became this character, this caricature, this meme at the end of his life that is forever immortalized.
100%. Dude, this is going to blow your mind. Not only did he used to dress normal. He used to have, darker hair and just a family and normal guy. He ran his gas stations and he was involved in some shady stuff, always was. But he, at 66, you're familiar with the Suicide Boys, right?
Yes.
These cousins from Louisiana got together and said, hey, we're both 26. We don't like where we're at in life. This is not what we want to do. We want to be artists, right? We're gonna do this whole rap thing. And if the rap thing doesn't work out, we're just gonna call it quits, commit the S word. Self, delete themselves for YouTube sake.
Yeah, all good.
That's the kind of the Suicide Boys brand. is they made this suicide pact with each other. That's their official lore of the band, right? Not a big fan or whatever, but it always makes me think of them, the Colonel Sanders story. Because at 66, Colonel Sanders, back then, this kind of ties in with Satan and Saturn in 66 and 33, Freemasonry. Back at Civil War times, you were expected to retire at 65. That was kind of starting to be the norm. So at 65, you kind of cashed out in life. And either your children took on your business, you could still be involved. But 65 being the retirement age was already in place back then. Right, they're kind of trying to change that today, but at 65, Colonel Sanders is preparing for retirement. At 66, he realizes it's time to retire, and he's not proud of what he's done in his life. He looks at his life and he's saddened. He's depressed. He actually decides he's going to commit the S word. His family can't console him. He doesn't care. Doesn't care how much he does have. He doesn't feel fulfilled. So he goes to commit the S word. And the only thing that stops him from doing it, I swear to God, is contemplating his love for fried chicken. That he was about to do it off himself.
This is canon. This is like part of his history. That
I swear to God. I swear to God. So at 66, he decides he's going to end his life because he doesn't want to retire, because he hates not working and he feels like he didn't do anything. And at 66, he then goes and does the whole KFC operation. He pours his whole life into it. He says, I'm only going to be fried chicken from now on. And he pours his whole life into this fried chicken. His family's like, what are you doing? What are you doing? And he just believes in it, right? Maybe he had some
divine intervention.
Divine, not divine, more the underworld intervention. But basically, he starts KFC, and out of nowhere it becomes a success. And not immediately, but he had to partner with that other guy, and boom, it becomes a success. So you were mentioning he became a meme. He is not just a meme. The lore behind him, the tragedy, the comedy involved.
The divine comedy.
It's right out of your comedy tragedy, like a Greek drama.
Well,
basically, here's the other thing. 66, he's ready to end it all. Within a matter of years, only a couple of years, he's the second most recognizable human being to ever exist behind Jesus, and we don't even know what Jesus looked like. Meaning, he's the most recognizable real face in the entire world as of 1970.
He was a billionaire at the age of 88. Multi-billionaire.
Look it up, how recognizable he was. He was the second most recognizable person in the world back in the 70s. Behind Jesus.
So is there like is there a comparison chart or something like that shows how?
Just look it up. He was the world's second most famous celebrity, if you're counting Jesus as celebrity.
How famous was Colonel Sanders 1970s? So no, I don't see that. But I wanted to talk to you about this part here, which is weird. Is like, this is bizarre.
Go watch my video. It's in there.
It's in
Promise.
there? All right.
Promise it's real. You look it up. He's the second most recognizable person ever.
So
when they took that survey in the 70s.
This part here where allegedly he had a secret recipe, a secret sauce. Maybe he was jizzing into the batter or doing some right. stuff. Who knows? Because this seems to be a sort of a theme throughout. Is Coca-Cola? I don't know, because I've been to the museum in Atlanta, Georgia, right? Part of the G in the FAG area. So I went and they have, they play into this whole thing of it's a secret recipe. Here's the vault and it's locked up. And
yeah.
like, what?
Well, here you want to hear the juicy details on that, the secret recipe.
Is it semen?
We know what the recipe is. Well, could be blood, could be whatever, but we kind of mentioned this earlier. There's movies that revolve around this. They cloned Tyrone. Golden Circle, the Kingsman, the Kingsman movie, the second Kingsman movie, just like the second National Treasure, was about the Golden Circle for no reason whatsoever. And in the second Kingsman movie, which is very occult influenced.
Oh, the Golden Circle. Literally, that's the name of the movie.
Yeah. Yep. And guess what? They travel from Wales or Scotland, whatever, just like the Scottish Freemasons, to Kentucky. And in the Kentucky, they mix, they sneak into the Knights of the Golden Circle, or the Golden Circle, which is, they say it's the Secret Service. It's like the secret service of America. And that's what they called the Knights of the Golden Circle in the Civil War, was the Confederate Secret Service, SS. And the KGC, or the GC, the Golden Circle in this movie, they're working with the Golden Circle, and then they go, and the plot of the movie is that they're trying to take down the world's #1 drug cartel leader. And she's Wendy. Her name's Poppy, but she's Wendy. And she also, in addition to being a drug dealer, cartel boss, also runs a diner chain, and a hot dog chain, and a donut chain, and an ice cream chain. And this is the plot of the movie, is that she poisoned the whole world through her and poisoned drugs. And they have to go get the antidote from her secret island. And on the secret island, she puts a whole human into a meat grinder and then feeds that hamburger to people. That's the plot of the movie. It's an MK Ultra, nanotech. So it's burgers with nanotech in their tubes, so they can turn you sick when they want to. And the whole world gets sick, and then they need a antidote.
And this is a comedy too, bro. This is a comedy, and life imitates art, and it makes me think of, in Breaking Bad, the other guy was it Los Pollos Hermanos was the name of, what was it?
Yeah. The chicken restaurant.
Yeah, he owned the chicken restaurant, and he was like the kingpin. He was like one of the main guys, the bigwig in the whole operation. But little did we know, right? He looks like a nerd, right? Nobody thinks anything of him.
Yeah, he's Obama.
But yeah, he's running the show.
Michael, would you like the Michael meal? McMichael?
The McMichael, dude. Damn, bro. This subject ties into so much. I mean, this is...
Oh, yeah.
It's like a... I know you don't like conspiracies. I know you said not to think of everything as a conspiracy, but it just seems like everything lines up, man. And what are your thoughts on, because, right, we have this sinister agenda, the Illuminati and the Freemasons and everybody, they worship Lucifer, but what do you think is the goal? Because we've always had this history that paints these esoteric and occult groups in a dark light. Do you think that their motives are dark to bring forth a new world order? Like, because Albert Pike talked about that.
They're Luciferians. It's if we're talking about the Southeast United States and the KGC, these are openly Luciferian societies.
What does that mean, Luciferian? What is Lucifer?
Lucifer is the morning star, is Venus. It's the planet Venus, especially as it rules the sign of Libra. Venus is also a crescent, by the way. Venus is the fertile crescent. Venus rules fertility. In all your ancient goddess religions, cults, Venus is your feminine fertility goddess. And from Venus, when you look at it through a telescope, Venus is usually a crescent moon. It's not a full orb. Venus appears as a crescent moon much of the time. So, Venus being the crescent moon, fertility, the fertile crescent, going back to the Gulf of Mexico. And you've also got the Tropic of Cancer sneaks in right between Florida and Cuba. So there is a bit of an astrological kind of trifecta to this area. You've got the fertile crescent being represented in the geography itself. You've got the Tropic of Cancer sneaking into the Gulf of Mexico. And at the top end, you've got Jerusalem, 31st. But here, there's the esoteric links to some of these fast food places. It doesn't stop there. I'd love to fit in a couple more. Crystals was founded because the wife of the owner had a epiphany using a crystal ball. Crystals comes from the crystal ball that the
What?
wife of the owner had she was mesmerized by this crystal ball and had a flash epiphany. And she said, we're going to corner the market by having the cleanest kitchen in the whole world. Something like that, I'm paraphrasing. But she said, oh my God, I know how to start the best food business in the world. It needs to be clean. We need to clean everything. Sterile. But yeah, crystals, the official lore behind crystals is they started when the wife of the owner had an experience with a crystal ball. Carl's Jr., Hardee's and Carl's Jr., they were founded. Oh shit, we got off topic from the spices too, the herbs and spices. KFC. You want to know how deep this gematria and Masonic word games go? KFC, like we were saying, KGC. Yes, G and F are interchangeable, but also this goes back to the KKK. It's the same colors as the KKK, white and red. He only wore white the rest of his life. KFC. Get that. What's up, my brother? You going get some KFC up
It's
in here?
finger licking good. Is that KFC?
Yes. That the Mormon, I think, came up with that too. That catchphrase. But they got black people onto KFC hardcore, to the point where they even joke about it themselves now. Fried chicken, also fried. This is a stretch, but it's true. Frying goes back to Freya. Venus rules fat and excess and indulgence and indulgent foods. Restaurant, Taurus, ruled by Venus, rules indulgence, rules consuming, and basically, there's you were saying how many ingredients there are in KFC, or the secret recipe, right? They guard the secret recipe. Well, it's not that secret. We know what the herbs and spices are. It's been released like 100 years ago. There's people who said they found it. And then on the website, you can look at the ingredients. Now, what they do is under natural flavors, you can protect your recipe by just saying natural flavors, because you don't have to divulge an ingredient unless it's an allergen. So natural ingredients or natural flavors, most people think that's like that beaver gland.
Semen, yeah.
It can be anything. It's an umbrella term to protect recipes. So natural flavor can be that synthetic beaver gland, but it can also just be oregano.
Their ass gland, right? That's the vanilla extract or something like that.
The scent gland that helps scents become like very, very pungent and linger. That's that essentially like skunk juice.
Nice.
That perfumes have a little bit of something rotten in them always. You know about this, so that you want the good smell to be packaged in a pungent smell.
Yeah, with the notes, so you can smell because otherwise you wouldn't be able to tell the difference.
Right. So most perfumes, it's been said, have something like rotten in them that maximizes the output of the smell. That'll carry the good smell farther and longer. So it's like a rotten body. You can smell that from 100 yards away, and it'll linger for so long. So they try to emulate that. Blah, blah, blah. The whole thing with the herbs and the spices, you have the secret ingredients that are probably just oregano, paprika, and they're conventional spices. It's not some secret recipe. Maybe there's a little jizz in there or whatever. But
The Colonel's
basically-
secret juice.
yeah, powdered. They powdered it down 60 years ago.
That's why he was white, bro.
Future supply. Yeah, he was. But the whole thing with the herbs and spices, there's 11. They won't tell you what they are, but they'll tell you how many there are. They always tell you 11 herbs and spices, 11 special seasonings, 11, 11, 11, 11. K is the 11th letter of the alphabet.
Is it really 11 that they say it has?
Yep, 11 herbs and spices. That's what they say. It's 11. There's way more than 11. If you go look on their website, it's like 20, including all the GMO oils and stuff like that. So there's not just 11 herbs and spices, but they are dead set on branding themselves as 11 herbs and spices. That 11 is a nod of the hand to the 311 of the KKK. K, K, K. 33. 3 times 11. K is the 11th letter of the alphabet. So you have 11, 11, 11, K, K, K. Again, KFC, KGC, you can't just have one dimension to your cool, esoteric brand name. There has to be multiple meanings and layers to it. So KFC, KGC, it's also a Germanization. KGC in German, there's not really a C, it's always K. And the G, it either makes a softer sound or it makes a K sound. So G, K, G, C in German could be written as K, K, K. And they kind of leave you a clue on that, on the fact that they used clan with a K for no reason. It could have just been Ku Klux Klan, KKC. But also, what does Ku Klux mean? That's the biggest giveaway there is. We haven't really, I should have started off with that. The Ku Klux Klan is a direct continuation of the KGC. It's not a conspiracy theory. It's the same leadership. It's the same people. It's the same funding. But then KGC, Knights of the Golden Circle, well, what's that golden circle? In Greek, Ku Klux means circle.
Wow.
It's the Circle Clan. They're the Golden Circle Clan. They just rebranded as the Circle Clan, KKK.
You're saying the same thing, just in a different way. I mean, that's just,
Yes.
you're occulting it, yeah.
Yeah. And the KGC, 11 herbs and spices, KKK, 11, 11, 11. The KKK wanted to distance themselves from Freemasonry. They didn't want to be just another, offshoot of Freemasonry. They wanted their own authority. They branded themselves as Knights of the Clan, the Knights of the Circle Clan. KKK, also because they didn't want to use 33 anymore. They decided to use 311. So the KKK, their call sign, their dog whistle, their, code word is 311. 311. 311. 3 times 11. K, K, K. Well, come to find out, the KFC herbs and spices, number 11. Now, Lon, are you ready to have your mind blown?
Do it.
Crystals. Crystal ball, right? What about Hardee's and Carl's Jr.? Would you believe me if I told you that in their official Wikipedia, in their official website, in their official lore, they tell the founding of Hardee's and Carl's Jr. as they took out a loan. The founders were so poor, they wanted to start a business, but they could only scrounge up so much money. Guess how much money they saved? Something like, it wasn't much. It was like under $20. You know how much that comes out to today? $311. Now that's just okay. Well, that could change next year. Maybe it'll be worth $313. Do you know how much money they took out on a loan officially? They came up with the amount back then in those dollars. 311. They took out a loan to start Hardee's and Carl's Jr. Hardee's or hard R's? Hard, you know.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we
But
get it.
311 is the amount of money that they opened Carl's Jr. with. And in their own official Wikipedia, it says 311 twice. They took out $311 in that year's money, which could be tens of thousands today.
What year was that? Do you know?
No, sometime before World War II.
It
probably.
doesn't seem like a lot of money. $311, like.
No, it was just one little burger stand, I think.
Oh, okay.
But $311. They chose that amount twice for their own official lore of that chain. And Hardee's, here's another thing, if you want to go real schizo with this. Wendy's, founded by a Freemason. A lot of these other ones were founded by Freemasons, Knights of Columbus, or OLS, KGC related people. All of them. White Castle. White people. Obvious. Castle. The Knights of the Golden Circle didn't use lodges. They used castles. They used white castles. So these white castles, what connects all these together? This is gonna sound ridiculous. It's hilarious. I've burst out laughing over this stuff. Squaring the circle. You got the square patty, circular bun. You're squaring the circle. You're taking something that everyone else does in a circle form, and you're giving it angles. You're doing the hermetic, the alchemical. It sounds so silly, but these are Freemasons who pioneered this industry. And the squaring the circle is what links White Castle, Crystals, Wendy's. They all do this.
But you've said this before.
Yeah.
We've talked about the shape of your food and like what part of the cow is a square, what part of the cow is whatever. And it's like these are unorthodox shapes that you're eating. And again, you're adding this more occult esoteric aspect to it where, in my opinion, it'd be the law of correspondence. And, in some sympathetic, magical way, it's linked to this other thing. And it's quite literally about the transmutation of yourself. Because they want to... There you go, right there.
It's the
you eat the philosopher's stone to gain its benefits. You can snort it too, but you can eat it and
it's also like the Eucharist too.
Yes.
Square or circle. What's your faith? What team are you on? And matzah, square, Eucharist, circle.
Oh wow.
Squaring, circle. Which team are you on? You could say, but the angles on there, the squaring the circle, is undeniably a reference to Freemasonry and the, alchemical theorems behind geometry. But squaring the circle with the patty, hilarious. Another thing, KFC, and a lot of these restaurants, they brand themselves with gold. Certain menu items, especially KFC and Church's Chicken. Church's Chicken, by the way, just look at the branding. It's all in my video. There's so much to go over, but almost all of these restaurants use a star in their logo or a golden circle. Literally all of them.
Mm-hmm.
Either a golden chevron or a golden half a circle. McDonald's is pretty much just two arches, rip apart a circle, two semicircles. And Taco Bell does their whole Illuminati ad campaign nowadays.
M is also the 13th letter in the alphabet too, so MM.
Right.
13 there, Mary Magdalene,
But it's not just fast food too. There's Circle K. a lot of black people hanging out at those.
Yeah.
And there's also Um,
Makes
a
you
lot
think
of
too about the Krabby Patty and how the Krabby Patty is spelled with a K.
uh,
SpongeBob, he's kind of square, so you
always
got the Star, Patrick the Star.
crystals is spelled with a K for no reason either. Crystals is spelled with a K for literally no reason. They said it was artistic flair. K, Circle K, Kmart, Special K
Yeah,
cereal, the big K,
Kellogg's.
Yeah, that's the KKK. I
Yikes.
It sounds ridiculous, but the evidence is there. Paper trail's there.
The paper trail is there, dude. So what do we do, Narco? What do we do with this information? How can we use this? How can we break free from this Krabby Patty matrix that we're in?
Yeah.
And how can we fight back against the systems? Are the salads from McDonald's good, or are they just as bad from their
Well,
burgers?
I'll tell you, as interesting as all this stuff is, none of it's really too surprising. I think we've all kind of known deep down food is poison, and not all food, but fast food is how they get that poison into you. Some of the things that most people agree unanimously are bad for you is found in fast food. The GMO soy, the GMO corn syrup, the GMO. Well, I don't want to bore people with my vegetarianism, but it's literally in a factory. You're talking about the worst quality meat in the world, the worst treated animals in the world. That's it's like it's a adreno factory,
Mm-hmm.
right? I mean, how else can you look at it? It's Goislop. It messes with your soul. That stuff. It lowers your vibe. This is obvious. It's kind of cliche, but it needs to be said. Eat better. Do what you can. Stay away from those places as much as you can. There's other people who look at it as it's only bad in the poorer income areas. Like they put more of the poison into the poorer foods. That's kind of the They Clone Tyrone plot of that movie and a couple others. Is that it's really just aimed at poor people. I tell this too, that in Palm Beach County here, it's a very wealthy county. You got Palm Beach Island right there. You got Boca Raton down there.
Which
There's
was one of the first cities founded by the Jews that came to Florida.
Yep. And those two groups, those two enclaves are some of the wealthiest spots in America. So Palm Beach is a very high income county. Lake Worth, where I'm at, isn't exactly. It's definitely not a wealthy area, but the county's very wealthy. You'd be amazed to know that in Boca Raton, there's not a single McDonald's on Palm Beach Island. There's not a single Taco Bell on Palm Beach Island. There's laws against them. They don't want fast food on that island. Boca Raton was limited to one Taco Bell and one KFC. Growing up, I almost never had them. Because when I was growing up in Boca Raton, you'd have to drive, 30 minutes to get KFC or Taco Bell. Some people think that Wendy's is the one for white people. Wendy means white. That it's the one that won't kill you. That it's, the healthy alternative. It's like, hey, white people, come over
I've
here.
heard a homeless person once say that Wendy's was too expensive.
Well, they again, I'd say don't drink it anyway. Don't eat it anyway. But their lemonade is healthier. They say they don't freeze their stuff. Wendy means white in Welsh. Comes from Gwendolyn. You're going to love this too. What else is there in the word Wendy? So this is just one theory. I think it's also adreno slop. Personally, Goislop, adrena meal. Adrena meal. But some people think Wendy's is like the white alternative. It's branded more for white people, pale chick with red hair. Wendy means white in Welsh. It's where the name Wendy comes from. Gwendolyn. But if you're looking at the American meaning of that word, Wendigo.
Yeah.
The cannibal spirit.
Yeah.
The cannibal ghost. You eat Wendy's, you become the Wendigo.
Yeah, which
Redheaded
is
cannibals.
the Faustian bargain there is like how far you're willing to go. But I had one last question for you, Narco. This is something I've been thinking about and something I asked somebody else recently, but I want to ask you, the doc himself. Is 3D printed meat vegan or vegetarian or whatever it is?
No, it's probably even worse.
Oof.
It's worse. So I've heard arguments. I've heard, this is like a deep debate with some vegans. Some vegans are vegetarian. Even though they want to eat meat, they just don't want to hurt the animals.
Mm-hmm.
That's not why I'm vegetarian. I'm a vegetarian because I don't want more corpses interfering with my aura. This is the philosopher's diet. I don't care if it's pretentious. I don't care if it's self-congratulatory. It works. Da Vinci, Tesla, all the world's greats.
Hitler.
We're Hitler. We're all vegetarians. So you definitely don't need this stuff. There's bodybuilders who go without meat. You don't need any of it to begin with. That's where the conversation should always start. But the lab-grown meat is not an ethical alternative. There will be dumb vegans, vegetarians who are like, oh, finally I can have flesh without a loss of life. To me, it's still life. That still got cloned off of a living thing.
Mm-hmm.
It's still living matter. It's still flesh. What's even worse is that flesh is not, as gay as it sounds, is not stepping in the ground, is not pooping in the grass. It's not giving back to nature.
It's a homunculus.
This is just, exactly. This is just like a demon creation, lab grown. That's plant-based. That's compatible with being plant-based because it's factory plant, industry plant-based, right?
Mm-hmm.
But that's not compatible with vegetarianism. Plato would never eat that. Socrates would never eat that. Pythagoras would never eat that. Hippocrates would never eat that. Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, I was curious about that one because I believe it was DeSantis passed a law or something like that or banned it.
Yeah.
Recently. Let me look that up before I spread fake news.
No, that's true. Yeah.
This fake meat. Did he ban it or did he pass it though?
He's trying to ban
lab grown meat ban in Florida signs. Okay.
Yeah. So
take your fake meat elsewhere. We take real in Florida. We don't take none of that synthetic grown.
Yeah.
So
DeSantis wants pure hot beef injections.
Yeah.
Unadulterated.
That's right. So, dude, it's very enlightening. It's a fascinating topic. I could talk about this for hours, and let's continue the conversation here in a couple of months. One time down there, we'll smoke a bowl together. We'll do a live stream or something. You want to give the people anything else where they can find you? Any other work you're working on? Any other stuff? Anything else you want to plug before we get out of here?
Just Old World Florida on pretty much all the platforms. YouTube, Spotify. Got a Patreon, got a whatever. But if you really want to support, you can get a Make Atlantis Great Again visor at oldworldflorida.myshopify.com. That's the only product we really have. 100% garden, so no chemicals. Chakra activation. We call this counter yarmulke technology. This is actually, it's like the donut hole.
The inversion of it, yeah.
Yeah, so they want to smother crown chakras. We're unleashing crown chakras. So get some sun, make Atlantis great again. That's the only thing I'm shilling.
Awesome. Dude, thanks for coming on, bro. I know you only do big shows now, but, our little show over here on the Juan Juan podcast. Thanks you for being here with us today. This was awesome. And let's do it again sooner than later, dude. I got to go on your show now. We'll figure out a day this week or something. We'll figure it out. And as always, everyone, make sure to check out Old World Florida. I'll post his links down in the description. Make sure to check me out, tjojp.com. Like, comment, subscribe, share, and see you on the next one.
Thanks, man.